Shared Ocean podcast brings you stories of lived experience from across the world as part of Ireland's response to the environmental and economic challenges facing many small island developing states. These proud island nations are on the front line in tackling climate change issues and are supported by Ireland in this critical battle by the Our Shared Ocean programme, a funding initiative by the Government of Ireland delivered by Irish Aid and the Marine Institute.
Hello and welcome to the Our Shared Ocean podcast. If you're looking for content and stories about marine science, climate and environment, island nations, collaboration and innovation, sustainable blue economy and marine policy and governance, you are in the right place. My name is David O'Sullivan, marine scientist and your host over the next few weeks and months as we learn about the shared environmental, economic and climate-related challenges facing the small island developing states. I work in the Marine Institute of Ireland on marine-related issues for a number of years and have experience in fisheries, seabed mapping, biological and environmental surveys, and I've led 152 deep-sea ROV surveys which explored the deep water canyons and the habitats of Ireland's offshore waters. I'm currently based in the Policy, Innovation and Support Services team, and I'm lucky enough to manage the Our Shared Ocean programme, which is a funding initiative by the Irish government to build partnership with small island developing states. Now, these are a group of 57 island nations recognized by the UN as sharing numerous traits, similar size with similar economic resources, all dealing with similar issues relating to the fact that they're all geographically adrift. They can be found in the Pacific, the Atlantic and Indian Oceans and the Caribbean and South China Seas. In reality, as we shall see, they are very different, with unique identities and personalities, some with populations in the millions and some in the thousands. Some have established ocean economies and others are among the least developed countries there are. Some have mountains and some are no more than 2 meters above sea level. Some have close neighbours and others are large oceanic states surrounded by thousands of kilometres of open ocean. Some are regional commissions and territories of larger nations and some are very much on their own. But there is one common threat. As realities of a changing climate becomes more apparent, these island nations are often the first to feel its burden, and due to their size and geographic locations are not well equipped to deal with these issues. As average oceanic and atmospheric temperatures slowly rise, they impact on the frequency and intensity of storms, which cause untold damage on remote, low-lying islands. Coral reef and mangrove systems themselves, natural barriers, are being eroded and changed by rising temperatures and ocean acidification, leading to further biodiversity loss and an imbalance in natural marine ecosystems. In the Caribbean, large macroalgal mats of sargassum seaweed drift through the region, gathering on beaches by the ton and destroying tourism, fishing, aquaculture and livelihoods. So it's hard to imagine that small island populations with little or no industry are responsible for increasing CO2 levels, temperatures or nitrification rates. And so it's unfair, and I think it's unfair, that they should have to deal with the fallout of such an extensive and global problem. And so to Ireland, another proud nation with a proud maritime history, and although our former Taoiseach Leo Varadkar told COP28 in Dubai just November 2023 that Ireland is a wealthy country, in inverted commas, it wasn't that long ago that we struggled for political and economic independence. However, over the last 30 years or so, we have built a strong marine economy with a good knowledge and understanding of our marine environment through research, mapping, monitoring, infrastructure, partnership and initiative. In 2019, Ireland launched a strategy for partnership with the SIDS, which promised support based on our shared empathy and understanding, because as a small island, Ireland recognises the challenges which similar islands face. In 2023, our second strategy for partnership with SIDS was launched by our Minister for Foreign Affairs in Taoiseach, Micheál Martin, and former President and current Chair of the Elders, Mary Robinson, which promised further support across 4 pillars: building our partnership, climate and oceans, capacity and advocacy. It stated that Ireland would foster ocean innovation and support the development of research networks, capacity building and knowledge sharing in ocean management between Ireland and the SIDS, which are the small island developing states. And this would be done through the Our Shared Ocean programme. And over the last 2 years, we've been doing just that. We've supported travel grants, master's scholarships, research fellowships, and marine research projects in 26 SIDS so far. But what does all that actually mean? So in this podcast, we will meet project teams and researchers from these nations and who have worked with us over the past few years. We will explore what it's actually like living in these islands all over the globe. What are the main climate challenges and how do they affect daily life? What are the main barriers they face? What are the local research community doing about it? And how will our shared ocean funding help achieve these goals? I have met many of our guests and I have heard many of these stories, and I think it is of interest to scientists, environmentalists, and policymakers alike, and worthy of sharing with you in this podcast platform. We don't have all the answers, but we're opening up the Our Shared Ocean podcast studio to listen to your solutions, and I do hope you'll stick with me for this series. And so, now we're finally here. Let's dive into the first episode. We're going to Palau, a small island republic in the Western Pacific with beautiful turquoise waters and coral reefs, which are habitats and refuges for many fish species of ecological and commercial value, worthy of monitoring and protection. To tell us more about it are members of the Palau International Coral Reef Centre, who have recently begun a project funded by Our Shared Ocean to assess the reproduction and status of a key reef fishery species, the longnose emperor. And so I'm very pleased to welcome our first guest into the studio. We have Ikelau Otto, Chief Researcher who helps manage operations and projects, including the Ocean Acidification Lab, Environmental DNA, and has responsibility for the National Marine Protected Areas of Palau. Dr. Piera Biondi, a researcher who obtained a PhD in marine science in Japan and leads several projects including MPA monitoring, tuna reproduction, fisheries surveys, and supports the current research project. And finally, Christina Karanassos, who has a master's by research in marine biology and is working towards a PhD co-supervised by the University of Tasmania. She leads PICRC, which is the Palau International Coral Reef Centre. She leads PICRC's Reef Fisheries projects, including fisheries dependent and independent monitoring, as well as research on the longnose emperor for her own PhD, which is being supported by this grant. You are all very welcome. I'd like to start with yourself, Ikelau, as our first guest in the studio. I wonder, could you tell us a bit about Palau? As I think it is of interest to many listeners, both in Ireland and abroad, that might not know too much about it.
So Palau is located in the Western Pacific. We're about we're southeast of the Philippines and Japan, 7 degrees north of the equator above Papua New Guinea and Australia. So Palau is a small Pacific island in the, there you go. It's a small Pacific island in the Micronesian subregion of Oceania. And we have about 21,000 population of predominantly Palau, as well as other foreigners here. Palau is a quite widespread. So as you can see in the image behind me, as well as the image in the background of the screen, those are our rock islands. So Palau has about 300, 400 rock islands spread out. Overall, though, we have about 7 main inhabited islands that everybody lives on. And the one that we're located on is Koror, which is the most developed. So that's okay. Palau in a nutshell. And we're very tuned in to our environment. We know very much how precious our environment is and how blessed we are here. So we have beautiful waters and a beautiful biodiversity, great ecosystems. And so Palau and Palauans are striving to just protect it for the near and future. It will go a little bit into conservation in Palau. So conservation actually is something that's instilled in the Palauan culture before the term conservation came about. Naturally, we're conservationists. Naturally, we're environmentalists. Whenever there was some kind of depletion in any of the stocks, they would notify the chiefs that ran the villages, and the chiefs would put moratoriums on these species until they were able to replenish the stock. And that kind of background and history kind of allows us to segue into modern conservation efforts.
How
And
can I just jump in? So this is before modern conservation efforts and maybe more advanced, robust scientific ways of assessing fish stocks. How did the elders know, the chiefs know, the local communities know when fish stocks were in trouble?
usually, well, the community, uses the resources plentifully. So they depend heavily on it. So once they noticed that there was, a decrease in a certain species that they usually saw at a given time, they would notify the chiefs, and the chiefs would then take that into consideration and put up the moratorium.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
So there's always been this link between people in the sea and Palau. Much like Ireland, I suppose, in that respect, island nations, and one of the reasons that our shared ocean is building these partnerships between island states. It's knowing that we have many of these commonalities, but obviously looking at the beautiful green turquoise waters in the background, we don't have them here. Where I assume there's a lot of coral reefs. That's in the Golden Triangle or the Coral
Yeah.
Triangle.
We're actually just outside of the Coral Triangle, so we have almost as much. We're still studying to see how many exact species, but about 400 species in Palau of different coral. So we are quite similar in the Coral Triangle in that we have a very abundant and beautiful reef system.
Wow, it certainly looks beautiful from behind. So again, this project and these funding initiatives for our shared ocean is looking at the environmental threats that are common to all island states, and they could be in the Pacific, they might be in the Caribbean. So we often hear about rising seawaters, increased ocean acidification, warming temperatures in general, increased storm surges. What are the types of impacts and threats to the marine environment that you see on the ground there in Palau and maybe in the wider region? And that could be for anybody here to jump in. Piera and Christina, I appreciate having been chatting to you.
Yeah. Well, actually, just almost everything you said, we feel it. So we're a very low-lying island, so we feel the threats of sea level rise. We experience the coral bleaching events here, and so Palauans are known to look out for coral bleaching and notify PICRC whenever that occurs, so that we can go out and do our assessments to see on what scale is it impacting the reefs. So that's something cool about the communication and community that we have with everyone around. But we also have land-based issues such as development and runoff, but then also overfishing. So a lot into what Christina's project is a lot of overfishing. So just a little backstory: there was we saw a decrease on our reef of reef fishes, and the national government noticed this, and they put a ban on all export of reef fish. So we are currently only allowed to export a pelagic fish or fish that have been agricultured. So this is a good support system. We see an issue, and then we work towards kind of preserving it and conserving it. And Christina can go into a little bit more about that with her project. But yeah, those are threats that we feel here in Palau.
Are they real threats? Are they imminent? Would you say?
Sorry?
Are they imminent? Like, are they very pressing?
Yeah.
Or have you seen a gradual change over the last 15, 20 years kind of thing? Or are there things happening really fast now? As regards species depletion or biodiversity loss or anything like that? I'm just wondering in general,
Yeah, Christina can go a little bit into maybe the fish stock on how we could see the recovery on that. But in terms of just storm surges, we've seen a significant impact on how more abundant they're becoming here in Palau, and it's not allowing the reefs enough time to recover before the next storm surge. In addition, with increase in storm surge, they're also getting stronger. So that's a definite impact to our habitats around here. Maybe Christina or Piera, if I'm missing anything, you can jump in.
I mean, I'll add to that with the fishing, the overfishing. I think it depends on if a species is vulnerable, that can happen very quickly also. So with this project, we're looking at spawning aggregations, fish spawning aggregations. So where the fish gather in specific locations and times of the month or the year, and that can be overfished very quickly. Yeah, or other things like, for example, sea cucumbers back in the 2000s, that was overfished really fast for export. And then Palau put a ban on that exporting of sea cucumbers. So I think it is pressing, depends on the species and what kind of threat.
It does depend on the species and the kind of threat. So we can't speak to being experts. I can't speak to being an expert on the species in Palau and the waters in Palau, but we had similar issues here in Ireland. We overfished stocks quite heavily in the 80s. The herring is a great example and collapsed over the space of a couple of years in the mid-90s. So it can happen very quickly if you're not on top of it, basically. So it's kind of important for marine scientists to be aware of that. Marine scientists are aware of it, but for the public to be aware of it and how quickly these things actually can change in the space of a couple of years. So it's great that this work there that you guys are doing. We're going to touch on your specific project in a little while, Christina, how that fits into it. But I suppose this is some of the reasons then that maybe the International Coral Reef Centre was established. Would it be right in saying that was for these monitoring purposes, specific species, or just for a general holistic overview or studies of Palauian waters? When was it was the early 2000s? Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, so I'll just talk a little bit about the history of PICRC. So in 1998, there was that mass coral bleaching that occurred, completely devastated a lot of countries and a lot of reefs. Palau was no exception. During that time, there was a realization that we didn't have any data to be able to quantify just how badly our reefs were impacted. And so the national government actually created the Palau International Coral Reef Act. And so that act is, by law, a center that is designated to survey and monitor our marine resources and all associated habitats. And just recently was, I believe, amended to include the PNMS, our Palau National Marine Sanctuary, and that's our exclusive economic zone, our open water. And so since then, the center opened in 2001. And since then, we've been doing work on all of the coral reef habitats and associated habitats, looking at everything from the coral makeup and natural disturbances, fish stock and macroinvertebrates, coral recovery, things like that.
And your vision is for empowered ocean stewardship that sustains people and inspires the world. Yeah.
So we're very big on trying to share the beauty of what we have here and work towards conserving what we have, teaching our locals how to do that, and segue on how to give back to the community and to the islands, but also contribute to the world in the scientific field. Palau has a very unique habitat. We have one area here, which it's called Marmith Bay, and the water conditions in there are similar to what had been predicted for ocean acidification by the end of the century. So pH.
Explain that a little bit, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so in the bay, there's areas within the bay that the pH is the lowest, I believe, is a 7.62. Okay. And open ocean is about 8, right? 8.1. And so this is a natural occurrence, and we suspect it's because of low flow-through rate. The water in there has a 72 72-day residency time. That coupled with the temperature and all of the leaves and things that biodegrade from the nearby rock islands create this unique environment. So we have a lot of collaborations with different institutes and schools around the world who are looking at ocean acidification, who come and examine this area to understand just how our environment is going to adapt to such futuristic conditions.
And so if the sorry, not the temperature, if the pH is lower there than open ocean at the moment, what changes are you seeing there, or what's different about this bay than, let's say the open ocean? If this is a naturally occurring event, what's different about it? As in, is there a difference in species composition, biodiversity, anything like that?
Yeah, predominantly it's the coral community makeup, so is different. So you're not seeing a lot of your branching corals, which are your faster growing corals that are out on the reef. You have a lot of your Parietes or Montipora, the big boulder corals that take a little bit longer time, but still a beautiful composition of a coral community. There's also fish in there, but not as abundant. Not sure whether or not that's derived from the conditions or it's just because it's such an enclosed area that there's not much flow through.
Perhaps yeah. Is there a different association between fish species and coral species, maybe, or is that? Or fish generally have,
like parrotfish and things that are in there that you would see outside.
Yeah, okay. And just out of curiosity, then, the depths of these waters, and this is an enclosed bay, so I'm assuming this is just.
Yes, I think the deepest point maybe 30 feet.
Okay. No, that's fine. I'm just wondering in general. I have some notes in front of me. Just in general, I wanted to touch on before we get into all this stuff. And this, of course, almost instantaneously really interesting stuff. The EEZ, which is the Economic Exclusive Zone, for people who listen don't know what that is a country's international boundary, essentially. It's about 600,000 square kilometers for Palau, but the islands themselves are 466 square kilometers. So in effect, I mean, there's only a very small piece of land and there's a huge chunk of ocean all around it. So, like, with Palau being a great example of these and others, there's a huge responsibility on yourselves and Palau and maybe the PICRC to manage and report on what's happening in quite a large ocean space.
I think there's a lot of us who are conducting studies now, not just PICRC, but Nat Geo Pristine Seas was just out here conducting some work on it. We're all trying to understand the uniqueness of what's out there, and PICRC specifically is looking at the biodiversity, trying to understand the biodiversity with some of the projects that we have ongoing.
That's amazing. And the last thing I'm just looking at here is that 80% of that EEZ is closed within the Palau National Marine Sanctuary, and it's got the most elegant name that I have ever seen written down, but I'm probably not going to be able to pronounce it properly. Ikelau Otto. Sorry.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Well, can you say it for me properly?
I have to pull it up to read it.
That's the name of the Palau National Marine Sanctuary. It was opened in January 1st, 2020, closing 80% of Palau's exclusive economic zone to all forms of extractive activities, including all types of fishing. It's referred to in Palauan as that lovely name, which you're going to tell us in a minute, and it's among the world's biggest marine protected areas. And the remaining 20% of Palau's EEZ is designated as a domestic fishing zone that would support food security and bring more economic benefits to the people of Palau, which I think is really interesting. Ireland, so this is where this knowledge of transfer is so important. Ireland and many other countries are trying to shut down their waters or close or parts of the waters for effective MPAs and marine reserve designation. but you've got 80% of your waters closed down and then 20% designated for fishing. So it's really interesting that you've gone through that process already. And it could be a very good worked example that other countries could learn from. Were you able to find the name of that? I can't wait to hear you say it properly. Doesn't matter, there's no pressure. So that is Christina and Piera. I'm very sorry we haven't spoken to you at all. We're going to jump in now and feel free. Who wants to go first with tell us about the project and the background and the study, the ambition of this specific project? So Our Shared Ocean is building these research partnerships. So Palau, essentially how this works is that you guys applied for funding and you're going to do a project which assesses the reproduction status of key reef fishery species, the longnose emperor. So do you want to jump in and tell us how this all came about, and who wants to tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I can go first. Yeah, so
Thanks, Christina.
Yes, this is Christina. Yeah. So the idea for this project actually started with a new fisheries management plan, coastal fisheries management plan, which was developed in 2021. And this is for the state of Koror, which is the most populous state in Palau. And so there's a bunch of new fisheries management measures that have been proposed in that management plan. It hasn't yet come into effect. And so PICRC was given the task of doing some baseline monitoring and also research on the reef fish stocks in Koror to kind of provide feedback and recommendations on that management plan. So one of the species that was identified in that plan was the longnose emperor. It's a really important species in terms of the fishery. So it's really common. You find it really often in restaurants. It's very common, commonly eaten by tourists and also locals. Yeah, and then not much is known about this species in terms of its spawning activities and also whether it forms these fish spawning aggregations. So another thing in the management plan was the identification of several fish spawning aggregation sites, and this species was identified at one of the sites to be protected. But the only information that we have is from fishermen, which is very valuable as initial information. But no studies have been done on this fish in terms of spawning aggregations and also how far do they migrate to get to these sites and things like that. So that's why we chose this species and how the project started.
And are this species, I assume, or can I assume, it's a regional species, so outside of Palau waters would it be could be found all around the general region, would it?
Yes. So it's in the Indo-Pacific.
Indo-Pacific.
Yeah. So
okay,
from Australia. Yeah. So
specific
Indian Ocean.
Yeah, okay. And I've specific interest in this project. So this is how the idea for the project came about. You needed to monitor some of these vulnerable species and look at this aggregations, spawning aggregations. Do you have an idea when these spawning aggregations occur? Or is there
it's different.
A rough idea, or tell us?
Yeah, so specifically for this species, so the management plan identified the full moon as a time to protect the species from 3 days before to 3 days after the full moon. But from talking to fishermen and also divers who have regularly been diving at that site, they said that the new moon was when they were aggregating. So we did some site visits and then identified
the new moon was when they're aggregating, not the full moon. Sorry.
Yeah. Yes, the new moon. And so we've been going there every month around the new moon to do various kinds of surveys to look at that species. Yeah.
Tell us about the surveys, how you would survey something in full moon, so presumably at nighttime or daytime. Tell us how you do
No,
that.
not yeah. We've been going during the day. So we've been doing several different kinds of data collection. So the one where we're going to the site every new moon, we've been taking a video along the reef at along a transect with a stereo video system. So it's two GoPro cameras that are mounted on a bar, and they're pointing towards the same inwards, like towards the same direction, and you swim along, and then using those videos you can then get the length of the fish, and also you can identify the fish, get the length, and also the abundance. So we've been doing those stereo video surveys at that site from 2 days before to 2 days after the new moon.
Do you use specific software that will help, that you use to identify the length of the fish, for example? When you just say it there, we have similar things in Ireland when they do these kind of surveys. There's different types of software. Do you have something like that?
Yes, it's a software called Event Measure, and it's for
okay.
the specific stereo videos.
So somebody then has to take the very difficult task of getting into lovely waters and scuba diving, essentially, with these GoPros. Is that right? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, we've been diving. Yes.
That must be amazing.
So usually it was 2 dives each day. So we would do a deep transect at 20 meters, and then wait for a little bit of time, and then do the transect at around 12 to 13 meters. And the idea is, because this site is, I don't know if you have the map of the site, it's a corner. And so the idea was to swim across the whole of the corner, and the deep and the shallow, to cover the whole site, because the aggregation is very spread out. Some spawning aggregations, the fish are really bunched up together, but this species, it seems that they're very spread out.
I don't have that map. I thought I did, so I apologies. That's the one called Shark. Yeah, I'll try and find it again, but I'm kind of working here, and we might be able to Photoshop that in later. Who knows? Okay, so that's very interesting. Sorry, no, a couple of things popped up on my screen. Anything else you want to tell us about the longnose emperor, Lethrinus olivaceus? Olivaceus? Am I right in saying that?
Sure, olivaceus.
It's interesting that you mentioned the moon there, because a lot of species obviously are linked to the moon and natural cycles like that. And I wonder, can I share this for an example of something? No, all the stuff I had backed up to share is not working at the moment for some reason. Palau is a lovely flag, which is blue and a yellow disc in the middle of it. And the first time I saw it, I said, that's the sun. But it's not the sun. It's the full moon, which is the golden disc represents the moon, which is special meaning to Palauian culture. It's traditionally considered the best time for fishing, planting, and other activities. And it's said to give the local a feeling of warmth, tranquility, peace, love, and domestic unity. Isn't that absolutely lovely that a country has the moon on its flag, as opposed to most of these countries that have suns on them? Does anyone want to jump in there? And how important it is, I suppose, and links back to the fact that Palau people have a huge relationship with their marine environment, and the marine environment, which is self-dictated very much by the moon and natural cycles like that, and that appears then on your flag. I think it's a lovely circle. Excuse the pun. No comments. Okay, so that's interesting, right? We've got the longnose emperor. It's circling around coral reefs. It's aggregating every full moon, we'll say, in large or small numbers. We don't know yet, and we're trying to count them then. And are they very important commercially?
Yes. Yeah, they're important for food, basically. Yeah.
Piera, do you want to jump in there and tell us a little bit about, I suppose, just the funding nature, what this means to yourselves, what this type of study will bring to the Palau International Coral Reef Centre, your own personal studies, and maybe Christina, you might want to jump in a little bits like these.
Sure. First of all, since I am the leader that applied for this grant, I would like to thank you for funding the research. And so, as Christina said, this research on this fish is very important for Palau in general, because it's a commercially important species. So studying its behavior and ecology is not just important for the purpose of studying a fish, but it can give us like a real economic value of the species, and also what we will lose in case this species will get like overfished or extinct in the region. And thanks to basically these fundings, PICRC is been able to and will be able to continue this research, to do more surveys. And also we were able to basically pay the salary of a research assistant to help us with this project. We were able to buy additional tags that Christina has been putting in fish, on this kind of fish, to study where they go around the Shark City area, and other receivers, so which are the instrument that detects the tags. And then of course we're gonna do more surveys, and we can in the future we're gonna try to pay some fishermen in order to give us basically samples, so that we can study the gonads and the maturity, at which size and age the fish reach the maturity. So these are all future surveys and studies that are going to be possible thanks to these fundings, basically. Oh, there you go. This is the map.
Apologies for being able to share this late. Yeah, so listen, firstly, just to answer your point there, and maybe someone can go back and talk about the map, sorry about the order of these things. It's been a really interesting project, and it's great to get involved with an institution such as yourselves, and we're delighted to be able to fund this project. We didn't have too much. You brought the research, you brought the work, you brought a very strong competitive application. That's how our funding project works. And for the next 18 months to be working in this project, which is hopefully going to bring real answers to the movements in and around this particular species of fish. You mentioned it's commercially and ecologically important, so it's fantastic that from all the way on the other side of the world, Ireland can provide this type of funding that will extend your work and might lead on to further studies and so on down the line. But before we get into that, maybe someone would like to take us through this thing which is called Shark City, a map of Shark City.
Piera, you want to talk about it, or should I?
You can go. Well, you've been there more than me.
I mean, yeah, so, well, the map on the left is a map of Palau, the main islands of Palau, and the outline is the barrier reef, basically. And so in that red square is a corner which is known as Shark City dive site, but the local name is Mutiar. Yes, and so the map on the right shows a yellow polygon, which is the area that is proposed to be protected in the new management plan. So that's basically where we've been going every new moon to collect our data. And then, as Piera mentioned, we've also been doing an acoustic tagging study, which is still ongoing. So we've got 6 acoustic receivers at Shark City, and then we've got another 19 located around the reef. Yes, up to about.
They're stationary, embedded into. They're stationary,
yes,
secured into specific areas, and they're receivers, acoustic receivers. What's the range in those, or? I'm just
It
curious.
depends.
Is it picking up everything, or is there a specific something related to longnose emperor that you're picking up?
I mean, well, you need to tag the fish with an acoustic tag, and each tag has a unique ID, so a number. And when that fish passes within, it changes depending on the turbidity, the waves, the wind, that kind of thing. But it can be, usually it's around 100 to 300 meters. So when the fish swims past within a few hundred meters, it will send a ping, and the receiver will record that information. So the date and the time that the fish passed by. So you can essentially see like when the fish is moving along the reef, and we're trying to find out, are the fish coming back to the same site every month on the new moon, or are they, only coming back every few months? Are the same fish coming back? How far are they traveling? That kind of thing. So yeah, as Piera mentioned, we were able to get 7 more receivers already with the funding that you guys have provided. And with those ones, we've put them in the back reef, so inside the lagoon, because the longnose emperor normally is found inside the lagoon. That's its normal habitat. So on like a patch reef or something like that. So we think that they're going from inside the lagoon to the outside to these spawning aggregation sites to spawn.
Okay, that's really interesting. So I can ideally tracking individual fish, the movement of individual fish, and then we can see where and when they're going to places, which is very interesting. And I suppose then maybe down the line for this project, and as I'm sure you've thought about this, there's probably some lovely kind of 4D visualization type thing you could do to look at fishies moving from A to B and so on and so forth. Okay, that's very interesting. And just very quickly on Shark Map then, so this is the entire island of Palau, well, the main islands of Palau is what I'm looking at on the left, and the red is the Shark City. So where is the corridor then in relation to this? And I'm sorry, no, I don't have a cursor that you can see on this. Is it in like the middle, or it's down south, is it?
It's kind of, yeah, it's kind of to the northeast.
Yeah,
yeah, it's kind of, I should have included that on there, but yeah.
No, it's absolutely
kind of
fine.
to the northeast.
I think
That's
if you
fine.
see like a little yellow dot there, right?
Yeah, I think we can see something. What's striking about this image is the fact that there is a coral reef system along almost entirely around the island, which is beautiful. So this lagoon, of which Shark City is on the north, on the west, if I'm saying that correctly, there's a lagoon, almost quite a large type lagoon area, which is inside this coral reef, and before you get to the main islands, is it? Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yes. Yeah, there's the lagoon, and then there's the barrier reef.
The barrier reef, yeah, it looks amazing. And is that lagoon? What goes on in the lagoon? In general, is there a lot of fishing there? Is that part of your no-take zone? Is there tourism, water sports, like anything, or is it just natural and open? Or
I mean, inside the lagoon, there's all the rock islands, so that's an important attraction for tourists. But most of the diving takes place on the outer reef or in the channels. I mean, there's a lot of patch reefs in there, so I think people do go fishing inside the lagoon, especially if there's bad weather, then you're protected from the wind and waves.
And is it those rock islands that I'm looking at in the back of your backdrop, Ikelau?
Yeah.
Or parts of them?
Those Pacific Rock Islands are like right to the east of the red square.
Yeah, okay. So, okay, that brings a nice visually home then. Wow, that looks amazing. I'll stop sharing there. Okay, guys, thanks very much. Is there anything else that anyone would like to mention about this project, or about PICRC, about your own work, or what you hope to get from this, or where it'll be in 18 months or anything like that?
I mean, I'll say a little bit about what we hope to achieve with the results from the project.
Yeah, please do.
So, I mean, I mentioned the core fisheries management plan. So we want to look at, obviously the aggregation site. So is the area that yellow triangle, is that protecting the whole aggregation? And then also the timing. So they said the full moon, but we've found them on the new moon. So, and then how many days before and after the new moon do we want to protect them? There was also some minimum size limits proposed in that management plan. So we'll be looking at, will the minimum size limit effectively protect this species? It's also thought that this species transitions from female to male. So all the larger fish will be male.
How does that happen?
I don't know the ins and outs, but a lot of fish change sex, either from female to male or male to female. And so if you only have a minimum size limit, that will allow the males to be vulnerable to overfishing. So you would want to have a maximum size limit as well to protect those larger males. So, I mean, it's not confirmed, but we're also with the gonad samples that Piera mentioned, we're looking at histology. And so with that, we'll be able to tell more. And also by collecting the length of the fish, see and try and confirm whether they're changing sex and if there would need to be a maximum size limit. And this information is not only useful to the state of Koror, it can also be applied to other sites around Palau, because I'm sure, and I mean, from talking to fishermen, there are multiple aggregation sites around Palau. And also regionally, I think the information can be used for fisheries management.
Thank you very much, Christina. That's a very good, informative overview of the project. As I said, we're delighted to be involved. Piera, anything you want to follow up with, or are you happy?
I think Christina covered everything research related, so I'll just take the occasion to thank you again. And it was, a pleasure to be in this podcast.
It's a pleasure to have you guys. And hopefully your project is 18 months, and I know you're just kind of starting now. We don't have exact start dates per se, but you've been at it for a couple of weeks and months getting things organized. It would be lovely to check in with you again, maybe in 18 months or 12 months, whatever the case may be. Have a look at progress, maybe have a little follow-up chat and see where you guys are at with all this. Palau is very involved in the international stage, as far as I can see. We've got this program in Ireland to work with SIDS, which are the small island developing states, and names of Palau frequently come up. Geraldine, your director, was involved in our initial conversations, how we would shape our project and how to work with the small and developing states. I've met Stephen Victor, who I believe was on your board, or maybe still currently is. He's the Environment Minister of Fisheries and the Marine, I think. I might have got that wrong, but he's very vocal on the international stage. He's been and he's going to SIDS 4. He was at COP28. So I think Palau has a very good story to share, and is doing a great job of kind of managing its marine environment, and is a good example of what's happening in that region and that area. So we're very happy to be working with you guys on this. Ikelau, would you like to follow up and just say goodbye to us or anything like that?
Yeah, no, thank you so much for this. It's always, we're very grateful for the support to be able to do this work. The results from Christina and Piera's study will help provide not only Palau and the national government, but also the community more information on how these species work and how vulnerable they are. Palau is a very big fishing community, but they also understand that they need to be proactive in order to continue fishing and protecting the species. So, a lot of people are going to be very excited to find the results of this study when it comes time.
That's great. Guys, thank you very much for giving us an oversight of your project today and how you're going to look at key reef fishery species in Palau. It was a pleasure to talk to you all today. Lovely to meet you. And as I said, hopefully in a little while we'll catch in with you again to see how this project is going. Well done to everybody, and thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
The Our Shared Ocean podcast is a funding initiative by the Government of Ireland through Irish Aid and managed by the Marine Institute. If you enjoyed this episode, you can find more like it. Subscribe, rate, and review on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. Are you a marine scientist or student based in a small island developing state? Would you like to tell us about your research? Visit www.oursharedocean.ie and we'll see you in the next episode.